Well, hello friends. I hope you are doing so incredible today. My name's Julie and I am here to teach you how to paint without breaking the bank. So we use just simple supplies from the dollar store to hone in our skills, and you can become an absolutely amazing painter with just using some simple acrylic craft paints and simple brushes that don't have to cost you a whole whack of money, okay? Now, today is Remembrance Day, so I put together this little fun poppy project for us, and it can really be for the whole family. This is a really simple painting that anybody can do. So what I want you to do is grab up your supplies. I have 3 colors for this project. I've got white, black, and red. Any versions of these are awesome. I have my cup of water, my paper plate for my paints, I have a napkin, and my usual paintbrush supplies. So I might not even use all these paintbrushes. I might only use one, we'll see. But I have my big fat Fatty McFatterson flathead brush, which can be a 3/4 inch or 1 inch brush. I have a long liner brush here, and I have my 1/2 inch flathead brush, or what I like to call my medium flathead, which is just a smaller version of my big Fatty McFatterson flathead brush. Now, why don't you go gather those supplies? We are going to be using a lot of water in this project because it's a very watercolory style painting. So I have a nice big sheet of watercolor paper, and honestly, use whatever size, whatever you have. But paper's great for this project because of how much water we are using in the background, and it seeps up into our paper. It likes to absorb it, so that works out really well for this. Canvas is cool too, so grab a canvas, grab whatever you want, and let's dive in on this very memorable day. So the first question I'm going to ask as a family paint night, and you can add this into the comments if you want, but this is a great time to talk about our family lineage. And if we've had anybody in our family that went to any of the wars that we have endured. So Remembrance Day in Canada, that's what we call it, is when we remind ourselves of all the beautiful freedoms that we have here and really honor the people who have gone and fought for those freedoms for us. So just, a lot of pondering that can be done while we paint this picture, a lot of gratitude that we can kind of feel in our hearts for what we have. Because when we focus on the things that we have, more good things come. So let's focus on all the good things as we dive into this project. And we are only going to add a little bit of white and black onto our plate to start off with. So I'm going to put white over here, and I'm going to leave a little space in between and put some black over here. And in this center area between my white and black, I'm going to start making a little pool of water. All right. So like I said, the question is, who in your family made it out and dedicated and risked their lives to go to war and fight for our freedoms? And the one person in my family that I know of that did that was my grandfather. And he was never really on the front lines, but he did do his time in the army. And I think he was a kitchen guy, and he got sent overseas to be all a part of it. So what I'm doing right now, I'm added this big, so you can see, I made like a little pool of water here, over here. And I started taking a little bit of white and a very little bit of black. I barely touch the black and bring it in over here, and it makes this nice pool of watery gray. So as I bring my water to my, sorry, that was really hard to say, guys. Oh my goodness. So as I bring my watery paint over to my canvas or my paper, I'm going to continue to grab water as we go, because you can see we have all these different shades of gray in the background, right? So I want to start really light, and I keep adding water to this little pool. So start with a gray, not too dark of a gray, a little bit of a lighter gray, And we can start to fill in this whole background with nice watery gray. So I grab a little water. I can move that around to make my mixture lighter on my canvas. Or I can go directly to my plate and use some of the darker gray to darken up maybe some of the sides. So I kind of alternate. I'll grab a little gray from here. I'll grab a little water and add it on and move it around. So I'm moving this all around my background. I'm going up and down. I'm going side to side. And I'm filling in all of the empty spots on my canvas, the whole background. When I run out of gray on my plate, I can just make a little more. I'll add a few more drops to my water spot. Grab a little black, grab a little white. And now this version I've made is a little darker, so I can go ahead and kind of pop the darker areas around the outside edge. And I'll often take a little extra water to kind of smooth them out, so there's not such harsh lines of darker colors in the background. And I'm just moving that paint around until it's all filled up in the background of my canvas. Ooh, hey, black. And that's what happens when you go too fast. You swoop black in there, but that's okay because I can grab a little white, I can grab a little water and just mix it in and keep on keeping on here. Now, if you'd like, I'd love to know who in your family has gone off to war to fight for our freedoms. If you would like to write their name in honor of them down in the comments, that would be so cool. And I just want you to keep filling up this background. So as soon as you have the whole canvas filled in gray, you can move it around as you like and wait for it to dry. And then I want you to come back to the video and we're going to start to layer some more elements on top of that, okay? So there's one thing that I like to use. I have a trusty little blow dryer that really helps me dry things quite quickly. But because we kept it really light, it shouldn't take very long if you don't have a blow dryer to just wait a few minutes for this to dry. You can also grab like a book or something and fan it off or blow on it to make your paint dry quicker. But honestly, it shouldn't take very long at all. So just fill up the canvas and we'll start to add some different stuff on top. How cool does that look? So because we kept it so watery, when it dries, we get these really cool little different hues of gray in our background. And that's kind of what we're looking for. We want it to be kind of wishy-washy. It almost looks rainy, like a gray sky kind of day, right? So when our little areas of wateriness start to dry, we get these really cool designs in there. And that's honestly one of the main things I love about using a watercolor style painting, or making a watercolor style painting. All right. So I hope that you kept the background pretty on the lighter gray side. It's okay to have different tones in there, but we do need to darken up our gray a little bit so that we can get these long grass pieces in the background of our painting. Okay. So I am going to continue to use my big brush for this. Now, one indicator that you need to know is you need to make sure that your bristles are going to stay together kind of nicely. So whenever I rinse my brush, I wiped it off on my napkin, dry it off a bit. Still a bit damp, but I can use my fingers to kind of smoosh together the bristles on my paintbrush. And you can see that they're nice and put together. They're nice and straight at the top. A nice upper view where all of the bristles are all nicely put together. That's a really great brush to make these long grassy lines that go up. If your brush doesn't do that, you can absolutely use a longer liner brush to do the job as well. But this brush is nice and easy. I totally suggest doing it. So I'm going to add a little bit more water to my pile here. So just grabbing a little water, I'm making this little pool. And like I said, I'm going to make a little bit of a darker gray. So I'm going to use more black than I did white this time. Okay. And as I'm mixing, I'm going to continue to kind of make a nice pool. You can actually like squeegee off some of the excess water and paint off your brush, but you really just want it to be darker than what is in your background. Now, when I say darker, I don't mean black. I mean like a dark gray. So as soon as you put a piece of grass on, if it's too light, you're not going to see it very well. If it's too dark, it's going to look really, really black. And we want to reserve our black paint for our poppies and their stems that we're going to add on there. So let's see how this goes. We'll see how this gray holds up in the background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my brush right on its side like this. So I'm using the thin edge of my brush to pull up. And as I pull up off my canvas, I kind of lift and swoop up. So this last corner of my brush is the last thing that hits the canvas. So check this out. On its side, I'm going to make a little swirly twirly up, and when I get to the top, I fling upwards and I get a nice point at the top of my grass. And these grassies are gonna go up. Like there's gonna be some that are super tall, some are gonna be just little spoots of grass like this. And I can probably lighten up my gray a little bit more. I'm getting a lot of black in there, so just lighten it up a little bit more. And I'm still going to continue to add a little bit of water in with my paint over here so that I can make nice loose pieces of grass here. Now, I don't want them to all be super wiggly. It's kind of nice to see them kind of like whoosh in the wind a little, but generally grass is pretty straight. So I just start at the bottom, and now I push a lot harder at the bottom so it's nice and thick, and then as I come to the top, I'm really light, and it's just I shoop it off the top. All right. And generally speaking, I really want this bottom area of my canvas to all be filled up with gray. You can see how it's all filled in down here. I don't have a lot of empty spots, so I fill those spots in with little short grass pieces. You can kind of fill it in with a little bit of just watery paint as well if you want. There we go. So we have a lot of random pieces. Some are a little taller, some are a little shorter. I'm just going to even it out with one more right here in the middle. You can even make them taller than that if you want. If you want to like go all the way up and, you know, make some nice tall grass, you're more than welcome to do that. Whenever you feel like it's complete, you can just stop, give your brush a rinse, and put a little red on your plate. So go ahead and finish your grass up and then get some red on your plate, and when we come back, we're going to lay the foundation for our poppies. Nice grassies, friends. I think you did a fantastic job. Okay, so you can see we're going to add our poppies in here, and the first thing we're going to do is actually create kind of a little bit of a burgundy color on our plate. So burgundy is a deep red, and we add a little tiny little bit of black with our red to make a little bit of a deeper red color. So I'm going to bring this in a little closer just so you can see the different nuances here. We have a nice dark red in the background, and then we're gonna come back after it's dry and add this nice bright red on top. And the general shape of the poppies we are making, we have our triangular poppies. So there's ones that have these upside down kind of triangle shapes here. We have our little fan poppies, so kind of triangular, but there's a little bit more of a ridge at the top here. And our, I don't know, I guess they're more triangular. These guys are more triangular, but they have a little bit more of a bump on the top. They're not so flat across. They have a little loft at the top. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 quote unquote triangulars and 1, 2 fan poppies. And truly, you can put however many poppies you want on your painting. So if you want to keep it nice and simple, you could even just do 1 poppy if you wanted to, or you could fill this whole thing up with all sorts of random poppies. It is up to you. Maybe there's a special number that you have involved that you can add, like members of the family. How many poppies are going to be in your painting? How many poppies they can represent the people that you've lost or the people that we need to remember as well. There's a lot of ways we can think about this. So I'm going to continue to use my big old brush. I'm going to give it a rinse. And like I said, we use a tiny little bit of black to mix with our red to start. So I'm going to grab a little water, and I'm grabbing the tiniest little bit. I don't even know if you can see it. There's there's black on the end of my brush, but there's that little bit, and I'm going to bring it over my red just on the side, and I'm going to mix the two together right here and make a darker version of the red. So I only use a little bit at a time because then I can just build on it and build until it's the color that I want. If I go and throw a big old scoop of black in my red paint, it's gonna make it like black basically. So I'm just adding a little bit at a time, just right to the side of my red, just until I get a nice mix that I like. So mix that in. When you mix your paint, some of it gets all caught up in your paintbrush, so I'll kind of squeegee off some of those excess bits of paint so that I can still extend the life of my paint here. A little bit of black, a little bit of red. And we don't need to mix too much in. We can keep it nice and light, and we can still keep it pretty watery because we're just shaping out our poppies at the moment. We're not giving them their full detail right now, okay? So let's start on the side with this one. Now, I always like a flower or a scene where some things are kind of popping off the canvas. So this flower over here, he's kind of missing his other side because he's off the canvas. It leaves a little bit up to the imagination over here, right? So that's what I'm gonna do on this one as well. I'm gonna go on here and I'm just gonna make a straight top, maybe a little further, straight top, and I'm gonna bring my brush down and back up and meet it here and color it in. Now the edges of my poppies are a little rounded, so I'm not gonna just leave a point there. I'm gonna kind of round out that other edge. And there's also a little wiggle to it. So we're not, even though I said triangular, we're not doing perfect triangles. We're kind of rounding out the edges of our triangles, and our sides are just a little more wobbly than a normal triangle, all right? Because they're still flowers, they're like flowing in the wind, right? We wanna see a little bit of movement in there. And that's all we're doing for now, okay? So I'm gonna, let's see. I'm gonna pop up here, and I have this fan style poppy. So for the fan styles, I'm starting at the bottom, and you can kind of map out where it's gonna live to start. Now, before I do this, I just wanna let you know, if you start small, you can always make your poppy bigger. But if you make a big old poppy, it's just gonna be big. So I'll show you how I usually navigate that, okay? So I'm gonna put my poppy here, and like I said, start small. So I kind of want it to be like that, right? Like that's the general shape of my poppy, but I obviously want it to be bigger than that. So I can, at one little stroke at a time, make it a little bit bigger on each side if I want it to. And then at the top, I'm going to use the side of my brush to make some bumps at the top. So some are a little more wigglier, Some are really just like a petal bump until I bring my brush over and reach the other side. And then again, just color it in. Okay. It's definitely not rocket science, but you know, if I wanted it bigger, I could bring it down a little further. I can widen it. I can make it a little taller. But if I just made a big old poppy, there's not much I could really do about it in this scenario. All right. So I'm going to keep on moving over. Now, they start to kind of like, you know, become together. So down in this area here, I'm going to make this guy. And they all start with that little kind of bottom. There's a little point at the bottom and it comes up, right? But if you want to change the shapes of your poppies, we can give it a little lump at the side and then just kind of fill it out in the top area. And we're just rounding off all of our edges. We're just rounding off this edge over here, rounding off the top. This one's a little thinner than this one, but that's okay. We're just, you know, we always just kind of do our best. Sometimes they don't always work out the exact same way that we want. Now, I've gone and used up all of my burgundy, so I'm just going to bring in a little bit more red and black over here. And it's okay if there's varying degrees of burgundy on your painting. It's all good. And I'm going to make another fan style flower just right here. So starting at the bottom, I got my two sides there, and I'm going to make some lumps. And I'm just going to pop over, making some bumps. Bring it down to a little rounded point down at the bottom here. And then I'm going to make another one of these guys up in this area here. So just going to let my brush do all the work. I just have to push it and pull over, give it a little wiggle, and it really just fills in all the spaces that I need it to. You can see all the different shapes here. And then I got one more big guy right up at the top now. He's a little flatter at the top, but same deal, comes down to a little point. Round it out up here. And voila, we have 6 very nice poppies. And I would love you to add more if you want to. You can definitely add more down in the bottom area down here. You could fill in the whole top area if you wanted to, okay? Please do if that's what you're feeling. So we'll let these dry for 2 minutes. Because we kept them nice and light and because they're watery, they dry really fast. So add in all the poppies that you want. And while you're adding these poppies on, I would really love for you to hit that gratitude button. Just take 2 minutes to think of 5 things that you're absolutely so happy that you have in your life. Even if they're little small things, we can hold them dear to our heart and just really revel in how lucky we are to have these things, okay? If you want, pop in your 5 elements of gratitude into the comments, and we'll continue this process when these poppies are dry. Amazing. So we have all of our poppies set on here. I hope you took a second to comment about what you are grateful for. I'll tell you what I'm grateful for. I'm like always insanely grateful when people are showing up with me to paint. And even though we might not be doing this at the exact same time, I can feel the energy from it. I am always so grateful to be able to have the space to paint and to teach you how to paint. I'm so grateful for my family. I love my little family so much. I have an 8-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son, and they are just so cool and they drive me crazy, and I'm so grateful for their craziness in my life. I'm so grateful for my husband who helps take care of the crazies with me. I'm so grateful to have a roof over my head and a home that I just feel so comfortable in. And I'm honestly just grateful for life and being and living a very peaceful life. So peace is what is everything to me. And I really hope that you have a lot of peacefulness in your life too. Painting brings me peace. So I'm lucky that I do it as a job because it makes me a very peaceful person most of the time. So if you need a little extra peace in your life, you should paint a little extra, okay? Now, before we add any red into our painting, we're gonna decide where the centers of our poppies are, and we're gonna use a little black to do that. So it's not much, but all the middles of our poppies, so on 1, 2, 3, 4 of our poppies, we're gonna kind of see inside of the poppies where we have this little bit of black, and we'll add a little white dots later. But right now we're just going to add little scribbles of black into the centers of our poppies. And in these poppies here, we're going to add a little bit of black down into the bottom areas of our poppies because we're not seeing the centers in these ones here. So I'm just going to grab my medium flathead brush, just a little bit of water, not a lot. I'm going to grab a little bit of black. And legit, I'm right in the middle. I'm just going to scribble a little black right in the middle. Not too much. I still want there to be lots of petal on all the sides of my painting here. But legit, just like a little scribble, just like a little scribble, scribble. Scribble, scribble. And then, like I said, at the bottoms of these guys, I'm just going to take the little corner edge of my brush and I'm just going to do one of these. I'm just going to kind of start at the bottom of my flower and pull up into it a little bit. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to give my brush a good rinse. And then I'm going to start to place some red on top. So if you take a look here, what I'm doing is I'm leaving the back of my poppy that kind of burgundy color. And I'm just kind of smudging in some red around. I'm going to cover up the bottom of my black center. And I'm going to color this all in red, and I do it very loosely and scribbly. So I'm just kind of plopping on some paint. So I'm going to wiggle my brush just like we did in the middle, add red paint around the edges. This one I put a little bit on the top and then worked my way around, but I still have my burgundy color in the background there. If you can see that. Okay. So grabbing just some straight red, and I'm just going to start to scribble in my red. And like I said, I'm going to go over the bottom part of my middle here. So I'm kind of covering up the black at the bottom, but I'm leaving the top all willy-nilly up here. There. Kind of like plopping it on. So it's very, there's lots of like elevation. I'm just kind of glooping it on. I'm not like wiping it around so it's completely dry, and I'm just going to bring a little bit up into the top part there, and that's it. So same here, just glooping it on. I'm just wiping it on, kind of wash the bottom of that black center off there. And this is very we're just very impressionistic. We're making the impression that the poppy has a front and a back, and we are seeing both at the same time. So I'm going to do all these guys here. this guy here. But I'm still staying within the perimeters of the poppy that I made originally. So even, it doesn't have to be all the way to the edge. You can still have a little burgundy around the outside edge. We're just scribbling that in really, really loose. Okay. And for our fan poppies, we're going to do the same, only we're going to pull up and add some strokes kind of coming up and in front of our burgundy area. So I'm leaving little bits of burgundy kind of popping out the background, and I'm also leaving this bottom brown, darker black area that we made there. So you can pull up, you can kind of make strokes up like this if you want to, or you can color it in all at once. But I do want to still see some bits of burgundy popping out the background, okay? And there we go. We got our poppies made. Pretty easy peasy, am I right? I agree. Now, while we let those dry, we have these nice long stems that we're going to add on. And we can really do this two different ways. So I'm going to show you. I have my long liner brush here, and this is a fantastic brush to get these nice little lines coming. So I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to grab some water, and I'm going to fill it up with black. So I grab some water and I'm putting it right on next to my black, and I'm filling up my brush with some nice liquidy black paint. So here we go, get that in there so it's nice and full. Now, whenever I have it full like this, I often either tap it on the side of my plate, or I'll give it a little drag or like squeegee off. Sometimes I give it a little twist to make sure that there's a nice point on the end of my brush. So check it out, there's a nice point here. I got it nice and filled up all the way to the top with some nice liquidy paint. And that allows me to make nice smooth lines that aren't gonna dry up halfway to my poppies. Okay, so I'm going to start down at the bottom, and I'm just going to kind of wiggle my way up. And I stop at my poppy. You can go from the bottom up or from the top down, whatever's the most comfortable for you. Now, if I didn't add all that water to my brush, there's no way I would have made it to the top. I'll show you. So if I dry off my brush, if I just put a little bit at the top of my brush, I just have a little paint on the top, I can start down here and oh look, I still have so much that it's still that's because I added water, but it ends up getting a little dry as I move to the top, and I don't want it to really dry up like that, okay? My point was not made here, but generally I see it a lot. If we were to just use paint and not get it nice and liquidy and filled up, then it probably wouldn't reach all the way to the top of our poppy. Now, if you don't have a nice long liner brush like that, you can absolutely use your medium flathead brush. And just like we did before, we want to smoosh those bristles together to make sure they're nice and put together at the top, that they look nice and thin from an upper view here. You want to really see if you can see that from the top there. And when you put your paint on your brush, you want to smooth out your brush. So when I'm putting my paint on, I pull away from my pile of paint and I flatten out my brush to make sure those bristles all stay together, okay? So still when you look at it, it's nice and flat, it's all put together, and that allows me to make nice thin lines on my canvas as well. Now, the long liner brush can be a little more difficult to use because it's it can get away from you, but this brush is a really nice brush to use and still makes really nice lines. Now, here I didn't do as much of a twist. I should have kind of twisted in and out, but I'm going to use my background one to kind of twist in and out of my poppy just to keep the landscape a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to start down here, and honestly, making a shooshing sound helps me so much. So whenever I make any like big moves or long lines, I shh to keep myself in order. So I'm actually going to start over here. I'm going to shh all the way to the top. So notice how I stopped when I got to my poppy. Fill that in a little more. I stopped when I got there. Stop and drop. And I'm going to do the same for this poppy too. So I'm going to pull it down and pull it over. Now we can make it a little bit more interesting. You can see like we can feather off some extra little pieces that might need to fill in some of that space, or maybe yours is all filled with poppies already and you need to make like 100 stems for all of your poppies. Either way, it's all good. Let's keep it interesting. I kind of like just all right, I'll stop. Now, this is a very simple painting, and that's all I got for it, except I'm going to add some tiny little white dots to show off the centers of our poppies. We want to show those poppy seeds off, and there's 2 ways we can do this. Well, actually 3. So it's cool. You might want to use a toothpick to do it, or if you have a nice pointy end on the top of your brush, you can just take a little bit on the end and get in there and just kind of litter the top of your poppy with all sorts of little dotties. If you have a little tip on your brush, that's perfect. Sometimes it's nice to use the wooden end of your brush, but that's going to make a little bit bigger poppy seeds. You have to be really gentle with it. You don't want to push completely, but sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of a variety of sizes in there. And I generally stick to like the top parts of my poppy centers. So I'll cluster them in little bits, and I'll pop over and get a little interesting with how I place my poppy seeds. I'll also put them up above my darker area to show that maybe they're starting to like emerge up and above from just where the center point is on our poppies. And just tiny little dots all over the place. Now you can use this painting to just hang out. Maybe you want to add like a name in there to honor the person that we're remembering. You can also use a little extra white on your brush to just add a few highlights onto your poppies as well. So if you want to add like a little bit of a white highlight on the tops of your petals, just scribble a little extra white in there just to vibe it up a little. Or you can do the same thing in black as well. But when you're done, grab some color. You can use any color you want. I'm going to use black. Use black, and I'm just going to put my initials down on the bottom here, because you should be really proud of making anything that you can complete is a big deal. So congratulations, my friend. Today, I really hope that we pushed some really good gratitude buttons. I hope you had some peace. I hope you learned a little bit more about your family and honored them through this painting. And when you're done, I would love to see the end result. So please, please, please head over to the Julie's Paint Party public Facebook group. You got to go over to Facebook and post your pictures so everybody can see how amazing you did and the awesome time that you had with your family. I always sincerely appreciate this time with you. So thanks. Thanks for hanging out with me. And next week, we'll be doing some more painting. I'll see you then.